event tonight. Before John introduces our distinguished speaker, I just wanted to do what I usually do at the beginning of these events and welcome both new people and old people to the Center for Inquiry. If you haven't been here before, then I'm going to tell you a bit about what we do. How many of you are new? I do see a lot of new faces. Oh, terrific. Okay, how many of you are not familiar with the Center for Inquiry then? So I apologize to the rest of you, but that justifies my usual spiel. The Center for Inquiry is Canada's premier venue for humanists, freethinkers, skeptics, also for non-believing folks, non-believing in God and religion, that is. And we advance reason, science, secularism, secular humanist values, and freedom of inquiry, and that's probably the most important thing, freedom of inquiry. That's why we have events like tonight that are somewhat controversial, pushing the envelope maybe, just to get interesting and stimulating discussion going. We also do social and community services, we do some political advocacy, campus outreach, it's all in our newsletter, and the new one for the period May and June has just come out. So if you're not on our mailing list, please fill out your name and address at the front table, and you can grab the current issue on the table as well. If you have more questions about CFI, you can come talk to me. I also, as always, encourage you to consider becoming a CFI member, what we call a friend of the center. It's $60 for regular membership, $20 for students, and then there's family and contributor options as well that get you various incentives if you're interested in those. You can talk to people at the front or myself or Katie at the end to learn more about that. I will turn things over to John.
So Dr. Stamos is a professor of philosophy at York University, specializing in philosophy of biology and evolution. He's the author of 3 books, including The Species Problem, Biological Species, Ontology and the Metaphysics of Biology, Darwin and the Nature of Species, and most recently, last year, Evolution and the Big Questions, Sex, Race, Religion, and Other Matters. Professor Stamos believes that studying philosophy should be interdisciplinary, drawing from science, history, and theology to answer philosophical questions. So please help me welcome Professor Stamos.
Yes, this is not a topic that would make one popular. The myth of universal human rights. That's what I'm going to argue, it's a myth. Which is a shocking thesis, but it might not seem so shocking at the end. We'll see. Anyway, to quote Shakespeare, it's full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Before I get into that, though, and make that case, we need to make a distinction between conventional rights and natural rights. Conventional rights are not controversial. They're man-made, everybody agrees. Such things exist. They're given and taken away. Governments give them, take them away. You can have the right to drive a car. It can be taken away. We're not born with it. It makes no sense to talk about universal human rights in the sense of conventional rights because there is no world government. We're not a citizen of any world government. We're not an employee of any world corporation. So we can't have those kinds of rights. We're not members of any world institution. If you're a university student, you have certain rights because you paid your tuition. There's no institution, there's no world institution that all humans are part of, so that we can have human rights in the man-made sense. When people talk about human rights, they're talking about natural rights, rights we're born with, that all humans are born with, often called universal human rights. So let's look at some of the key features of these. One is that they're plural. Right? It's not human rights, it's human rights. The concept is of a plurality, and that will become significant when we come back to this topic. It's also not to be confused with the idea of moral equality or moral value of human beings. Right? That's a separate issue. Philosophers like Peter Singer argue that people have equal moral value and also all sentient creatures have equal moral value. But he doesn't talk about natural rights. They're different concepts, sometimes confused. when we're talking about human rights, we're also talking about equal rights. Why? Because as one author put it, one either is or is not a human being. And so we're all equally human beings, so we have equal human rights. The idea goes. And again, human rights are inborn, inalienable. They cannot be given away. They cannot be taken away. Again, we cannot stop being human. We can't choose to give up my humanity and give away my rights. Also, human rights are universal. All humans have them. Now, when one looks at quick definitions of human rights, one notices something which might seem odd. Here's two definitions that are virtually the same by advocates of human rights. One is, human rights are literally the rights one has simply because one is a human being. Here's another example. The rights that one has simply by virtue of being human. Same idea. I see this definition recur and recur and recur. Okay, where do we clearly have this idea? One example, and probably the most famous example, is the American Declaration of Independence. Written by Thomas Jefferson, and we've all heard the words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident." They don't need proof, they're self-evident. That all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was originally written for the colony of Virginia by Jefferson, to break away from the King of England and the British Empire. It was shortly after accepted by other states in the United States, in America, within a month and a half, resulting in the American independence of July 4th, 1776. 1776, 4 years later, well, a number of years later, you get other constitutions, similar statements. Some states had a Declaration of Human Rights in their state constitution. An example is Massachusetts, 1780. All men are born free and equal and have certain natural, essential, and unalienable rights, among which may be reckoned the right of enjoying and defending their lives and liberties, that of acquiring possessions and protecting property. In fine, that of seeking and obtaining their safety and happiness. Now, we all recognize this kind of language. It's very popular, it's very famous. The French Constitution, a few years later, their constitution had a preamble on human rights, under, quote, the auspices of the Supreme Being. Right? And it says, "Men are born and remain free and equal in rights. The rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression." The idea spread. The United Nations made a declaration, a Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. The preamble talks about the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family, not the human species, the human family, which I thought was odd. And it says, human rights should be protected by the rule of law. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has 30 articles. It's very interesting to read. We can read that everybody has a right to life, liberty, and security of person, okay? No one shall be held in slavery. There's a right to a nationality. There's a right to marry, natural right to own property, natural right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, a right to equal pay for equal work. Everyone has the right to form and join trade unions. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, a right to a standard of living for the health and well-being of one's family. And that includes medical care, and that includes what they call necessary social services. Everyone has the right to education. And it's interesting that it adds, education shall be free, at least to the elementary and fundamental stage.